Assalamu alaikum jameen wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very warm welcome to our brothers, our dear sisters, our dear family members, as we are one Sophia TV family on this special show on Hajj, where we discuss the philosophies and practices regarding the Hajj itself. You're joined today by myself, your host, Zuryaab Syed, and our dear respected Hajj expert, our alim, Syed Ali Raza Rizvi. And we're on actually a very crucial point because we're discussing the final set of prohibitions which you cannot do whilst you're in the state of Ihram. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome our dear Syed to the show. Dear Syed, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah.
Dear Syed, it's a very exciting time for me personally. We're on the last part of the prohibitions during Ihram itself. So we've covered quite a few up until this point. We have a few more left. And I begin today's program, this episode, with hunting and carrying of weapons. Is this allowed? And if not, why?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hunting and carrying weapons both are not allowed while in the state of Ihram. And there are many traditions from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that forbid it. And we do have it as a question from Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam when the Grand Mufti Yahya ibn Aktham had asked a question from Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam that what is the kafara, the penalty of a person who hunts while in the state of Ihram? So the Imam al-Islam went on to say that your question is incomplete. So he said, how is my question incomplete? He said, you did not tell me if the Ihram was for Hajj or Umrah, or if the Ihram was worn by an adult or a child, or if the Ihram was the Muhrim, the person wearing the Ihram was in Haram or outside Haram, or if he had hunted an animal or a bird. And so he went into asking 13 questions. And so each place has a different penalty, depending on the size of the animal and was it during the night or day. Or so it is not permissible at all while in the state of Ihram to wear weapons, any sort of weapons, so knives, bow and arrow, guns, or any other sort of weapons, and because there can be all sorts of weapons these days. And it is not permissible to be hunting while in the state of Ihram. Unless you are attacked by an animal, like a lion or a wolf or something, and then you can only in defense kill that animal. Otherwise you're not allowed, or hit that animal so it runs away. Otherwise you're not allowed to kill animals or to hunt animals. However, the Sistani says that snakes, scorpions, and the mice or the rats are permissible to kill while in the state of Ihram. So otherwise, you're not allowed to hunt or wear weapons.
It's good you mentioned that, dear Syed, because that was my next point. That what about self-defense? You're being chased by an animal, or like a snake or scorpion comes out because it's a dry land. But as you mentioned rightly, that in those cases you are allowed to defend yourself, per se. But what about, they say, if, for example, linked to this, let's say I've been, God forbid, cut by a scorpion and I'm now bleeding and this blood is flowing quite fast. What happens in that state? Because generally speaking, I heard that you're not allowed to let blood out of your body whilst in the state of Ihram.
So when you have a choice, it is not permissible. So you're not allowed to donate blood, or sometimes there are many medical treatments where in traditional medicine you take out blood, like in hajama, or there are different methods.
Yes.
Where people actually draw blood through animals or just through certain cuts on the back or on the head or on hands or on the legs. So they usually have, that is not permissible to draw blood or to donate blood while in the state of Ihram. So once you're out of the state of Ihram, then you can go back to normality and it's okay.
But they say we have some people who might be diabetic and they require injections by treatment.
Yes.
But obviously when you put the injection into the skin, some blood comes out. It's sort of pricking at the skin. Is that allowed?
Now, if it is necessary, then it is permissible. So likewise, if there was, like you earlier on said, a scorpion, so if you would, so that's things like that are not in your control.
Yes.
But if you had a control over your medical treatment and you could delay it for a few days, then you have to. But if you had to draw blood because of medical reasons, and because that's when a person is unwell, or a person requires a medical test, or a diabetic person requires a test, then that's because it is required, then it is permissible.
Thank you, dear Syed. But dear Syed, now we have, people going from the West all around the world, and people tend to go in groups, as we mentioned previously. But there can be some conflicts of interests, of personalities, some clashes, naturally, because we are human beings with emotions. What happens if you're in the state of Ihram and you start an argument, or you get into an argument?
Unfortunately, it happens all the time. It is not permissible. It is not permissible to argue, or argue for the sake of argument. You can have a discussion, but argument is not permissible. And people fight and quarrel. Those are not permissible. Quarreling and fighting or arguing is forbidden in the state of Ihram. You can have a discussion. Discussion is when you are debating another person on religious matters.
Yes.
But for non-religious matters, or for worldly things, on politics, unfortunately, sometimes it can happen. And people don't care where they are. So they may be having a political... That is not permissible while in the state of Ihram. It is forbidden to have worldly debates, arguments, and long-winded quarrels, for to say. Those are all forbidden in the state of Ihram. But discussions are allowed with respect, maintaining the dignity on religious matters. But there has to be a condition that if a person is debating with a person who is a non-Shia, then you must have enough knowledge to get into that discussion. So the discussion is allowed, but if you are aware how to conduct that discussion, and you know how to answer your religion.
Otherwise, it's best to stay away and just be on the safe side.
Otherwise, it is best to avoid all of those.
So what I take from this is that worldly matters like football, you mentioned politics, business, yes. Properties, all this not allowed at all.
Business, a lot of people actually get into business discussions. And I have seen a lot of young people get into sports discussions and then find, no, your team isn't. And unfortunately, Shaitan is with you to destroy your Hajj. And I have seen in the plains of Arafat and Mina, people get into very small, silly points and make it into big fights. And I used to always wonder, why does that happen? And then I realized that it is probably Shaitan who wants to destroy your Hajj. So on very small little issues, people have huge arguments and huge fights without realizing that they will have to pay a penalty. And they're also losing the reward for their Hajj, because Hajj is all about self-control and not getting into arguments and unnecessary quarrels.
May Allah protect us all and all of our dear viewers who do go to Hajj, because it's like you spend all that money, time, effort, and then when you get there to spoil it, per se, for these worldly matters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. They say that what about if you invoke Allah's name? So you're having like a normal religious discussion, so not even an argument, but you say certain words like, by God or in God's name. Is that allowed?
It is not permissible. Unfortunately, if you say it in Arabic, or you say it in the name of Allah, I swear by the name of Allah, or even in English or in other languages, if you repeat it 3 times, then you will have to pay a penalty. But even to say it once is not permissible intentionally. So to avoid all of those, because Hajj is very sacred, and a person has to respect the sanctity of the place, the days, the mission, and the philosophy of this great ibadat. So all of those should be avoided in the state of Ihram.
So again, like I mentioned, they said, what I gather from this is even your words, you have to be very careful.
You have to be very careful.
Extremely careful. Okay. But they said, what about if a person is not even arguing like we just said, discussing. But by mistake, they use some foul language, or there's a lot of slang being used now by the youth. If they use that, now in English, it's not a bad term per se, but because it's in a discussion, would that be allowed?
You are best to avoid all of those, because some of those may again lead to certain other implications. And secondly, slang is fine so long as it is not hurting and disrespecting the others. And not leading to arguments, because sometimes little things, people I've seen always say that you're in Hajj and you're doing this, you're disrespecting me, and you don't even care, and that leads to arguments. Well, what do you think, you're more religious than me or something, So unfortunately, little things lead to big issues. And my point I'm trying to say is that avoiding any sort of disrespect or slang is best. So even though certain words may not be forbidden to use, it is best to avoid certain usage of slangs and things that may lead to other things, which may be argument or quarrel.
Certainly. And I completely agree there, Syed, because it's like we mentioned, you travel all that way, you put in all that effort just to wash it away with some worldly affairs. They say then, just coming back to the point we made earlier about bloodletting, generally speaking, it's not allowed. What about if there's a lice or there's like a flea or a small spider walking on your skin? Can you sort of kill it or push it away? Or
you can remove them, but you cannot kill them, the mosquitoes or the spiders, or because I do remember in the plains of Arafat, there were a lot of mosquitoes, because they have a lot of plants now. So a lot of, because when they're spraying, water.
Yes.
So killing physically or even spraying to kill the animals or insects is not permissible. So if you spray and that kills and you know that it's going to kill, so all of those sprays are not allowed. Others can do it who are not in Hajj. So there are people who are, locals who are serving the Hajis, so they can do certain things. But you cannot kill any insects, spiders, or any other sort of animals, except for the ones that we've already mentioned, that like snakes, scorpions, and mice. But otherwise, generally, you're not allowed to kill even insects.
What if it's done unintentionally, or for example, you sort of just flick it away? You don't know what's going to happen to it, you just flicked it away out of carelessness. Is that allowed?
You can remove them. You can obviously move them. For example, you can blow so the mosquitoes, are moved, or you move your hand very fast so that they don't sit on you or sting you. Those are allowed. But to kill them is not permissible. If you accidentally kill them, then it's okay, if it was an accident. But you have to make sure that you don't intend to kill, because what happens usually is that, we kill the insects straight away, or the mosquitoes that sit on us or drink our blood.
Certainly. And just a final point on this day, Syed, just to round it up, we mentioned some certain prohibitions, and we've said that, you have to be very careful of your words as well. So it's your physical, spiritual self, but your words as well, you have to be extremely careful. What if, for example, me, my friend, we're sitting on the coach together, we're traveling towards Arafah in the night, and we just get into a discussion about your family. Like, where are you from? Where am I from? My ancestors are like this, your ancestors are like that. Is that allowed, or again, it's best to be on the safe side?
No, you're not allowed to boast about your family background. I'm a rich person, I'm better than you. My family background is better than yours. None of those are allowed to get into, where you are basically being proud or being arrogant about and you're boasting about your family heritage. So those are best to not even get into. So it's best to just say that, we are on Hajj and try and do dhikr as much as you can, read Quran as much as you can, or just, any sort of tasbih or istighfar is the best, or any short surahs and any Ayatul Kursi is the best thing to recite.
So it's almost like you should, even if you have a buddy with you, make sure that you agree in advance that you're going to be encouraging each other to do dhikr or other things, rather than speaking about your background and so on. Okay, thank you, dear Syed. Unfortunately, again, that brings us to the end of the show for today. Thank you so much for your time and your efforts. We really appreciate it. Dear viewers, once more, thank you to you two for joining in on this show. Now, we've discussed all the prohibitions for Ihram. So the next episode, inshallah, will be discussing specifically the tawaf. So you don't want to miss it. Once more, the tawaf is one of the essential components of the Hajj itself. And inshallah, we'll be discussing with our dear Syed the different components regarding the tawaf itself. So do tune in. Until next time, on behalf of me, your dear host, and our dear Syed today, please remember us in your du'as. Thank you. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.